This is the second part of this story. Please, follow the link in the right-hand top of the screen to go to the first part and come back to this video. This story is worth it. Update.
I'm waiting for the mods to approve this. It's been a while and yesterday was Father's Day. Luna tried calling me several times and I looked at the phone. I wanted to answer, I didn't, but all that kept lingering in my mind was those messages. What she said to her mother, to her real father, her friends. So, I ignored it. Eventually I listened to her voicemail and she sounded so cheerful. She briefly apologized for her actions, but to me, it didn't sound sincere, just passive. Maybe I'm overthinking it. She mentioned about her son, her finance and asked me to call her. Simple requests and I became infuriated. My grandmother and my fiancé are telling me to give her a chance, but when I asked my grandmother if Luna or Marisol ever asked about me in the 4 years I left, she said Marisol did, constantly, but not Luna. So, in my twisted mind I think Luna wants me in her life to her child would be taken care of. Or maybe she wants to milk me and that made me so angry. Even Marisol tried calling me constantly and I'm already thinking about changing my number. So, I spent the majority of my Father's Day in the gym, hitting the heavy bag, and I have an appointment today with an anger management group. Maybe they can give me an outside opinion. If this ever gets published by the mods, I would like to get your opinion as well. In the meantime, I'm just figuring this out on my own.
Update.
I would like to thank one of the commenters for the advice on sending an email as a start. I sent a small email to Luna that simply said, "What do you want?" Didn't expect the multi-paragraph response. She started the email profusely apologizing for how she acted. She said when she found out I wasn't her father, she was angry. She confronted her mother and she cried, making her promise not to tell me. Since she felt lost, she began to talk to my cousin, her real father, more and more. He told her of my violent past, the things I used to do, things that I kept a secret from her. This made her angry, and the more they spent time together, the more she pulled away from me. She said she felt bad from time to time, but my cousin would reinforce her feelings towards me. The day of the quince, she said while we were dancing, she realized how stupid she was acting. She realized how much I loved her, and then her messages appeared on screen. In the days that followed, she was told by my wife's side of the family to give me space. To not call me, and she listened. She said she was watching her family fall apart because of her and she couldn't do anything to fix it. She told me she understood why I did what I did, yet she wanted to reach out. Her grandfather kept telling her that I loved her, that I raised her, and despite what I saw through her messages, I would do the right thing, and she believed him. During the divorce, her mother fell into a dark place. Not talking to her, barely eating, she was just existing. When she found out that my name was removed from her birth certificate, she said she had a panic attack. Her mother told her that they will have to move back to Brooklyn, and when she asked about her life in school, her mother told her, "That was the life your father gave you, and he's not your father anymore." So she called me, begging, and I cursed her out, then hung up. She cried for days. She tried to reach out to my cousin, who pretty much ignored her. She even went to the church, and he told her to leave. Called her a mistake. Her mother refused to talk to her, basically locked herself in a room, only leaving to use the bathroom or take a shower. She begged her grandfather to take her to see me, and when they came to Long Island, she learned that I moved. Her grandfather told her that he would talk to my grandmother and find out where I went. For the next 2 years, according to her, it was hell. The entire neighborhood knew what happened to her and her mother. Her father avoided her at all costs and tried not to pay child support. It took her grandfather to threaten him to start paying. In the meantime, her mother didn't talk to her. She was just locked in her room. The few times they did spoke, she called her an ungrateful girl, and she was the reason why she lost the love of her life. Her grandfather had to put her mother in her place by telling her that her infidelity was the reason why she lost the love of her life, and she locked herself back into the room. So, Luna barely stayed home, and that was how she met the father of her child. He worked in the corner bodega. They were the same age, and after a few months of talking, one thing led to another and she ended up pregnant. Her grandfather was furious, but when her boyfriend insisted that he would marry her, that cooled things down. Luna said her pregnancy was a blessing in disguise. Her mother began talking to her again and even began leaving the room to be by her side for every checkup. Being a senior in high school while pregnant was cliché, but she made it work. A month before the baby was born, she graduated, and her boyfriend joined the Marines. He wanted to elope before leaving, but she wants a wedding. Her boyfriend had no issues naming his son after me. Apparently, his father was absent, and the fact he was a junior was a reminder that he shared the name of a man who didn't want him. When she heard I was in town, she got a speeding ticket trying to get to my grandmother's apartment. She wanted to see me, wanted to apologize, wanted me to see her son. She just wanted to see me. However, she was late, and she cried. When her mother gave her my number, she wanted to call me immediately, but the entire neighborhood was talking on how I beat her father up, so she waited. Her mother was sad to see that I moved on and have a son. Luna was happy to know she had a little brother, but her mother became a little more depressed. I felt sorry for Marisol. After I read the email, I called Marisol and asked her if this was true. That she refused to talk to Luna for years and blaming her for our divorce. She confirmed it, and at first, I yelled at her, but I regained my composure when I heard her crying. I told her to move on, find someone else, but she said no. She told me that I was her husband, and I will always be her husband. It broke my heart a little. I then had my grandmother go see my cousin so I could talk to him. The second he heard my voice, he began to cry and begged me to forgive him. I just asked him why he didn't be a father to Luna? Why he poisoned her against me, and he said it was envy. He was in love with Marisol, and I took her from him. When I was arrested, he consoled her, manipulated her, and barely last a second with her, and she realized what she was doing and shoved him off of her, but he already came. When she found out she was pregnant, he knew the baby was his. They both knew. It was supposed to be a secret. Marisol took her double hysterectomy as God's punishment for her infidelity and deceit. When Luna turned 13, he was drunk. Seeing my life, and envy was the one sin he couldn't shake. So, he wanted to ruin it. And he did. I told him when we see each other again in hell, I will be his eternal torturer, and hung up on him. Jocelyn was there for me. She told me that everything will be okay. Luna and I commented through email. I spoke to her on the 4th, she spent over an hour crying while talking to me. I even spoke to her boyfriend, who asked me permission to marry her. I thought it was funny, but honorable. My wedding is next month, and Jocelyn wants me to invite Luna. At the same time, Luna wants me to give her away for her wedding in November. My future father-in-law sat me down and told me that he couldn't grasp my situation but respected the road I took. Because the road saves his little girl, gave him a handsome grandson, and a future son-in-law that he would kill for. That made me laugh, but he told me that I need to let go of the anger and start forgiving, but never forget. He's right. So, we gave Luna an invite to my wedding, even offered to pay for the plane ticket. Her boyfriend, or should I say fiancé, said that he will work it off at my garage when they arrive. I kind of like him. As for me giving her away, I don't know yet. Let's see how the wedding happens first. Thank you again for the advice and the few DMS. No one was rude or disrespectful. You guys helped me so much. I'll update if something happens, but for now, I have to get things ready for my wedding next month.
Update.
A lot has happened in such a short window. Again, I would like to thank you for the large amount of support within the DMS. Of course, there were hate messages, but all I could say to those people, what you would have done and what I did are two different mindsets, and until you go through the same situation or something similar, don't tell me how I should have felt. Leading up to the wedding, I was already on eggshells. Jocelyn was the happiest I have ever seen. My in-laws were freaking out due to the number of people that were coming. I swear, I think the whole town came. While all of this was happening, I was an hour and a half away in Boise waiting for Luna and her family at the airport. In the days leading up to her visit, we spoke. A lot. Her mostly crying, apologizing, and me just listening. When she couldn't speak anymore, I was talking to her fiancé, who is more down to earth. When their plane landed, I was so scared. Not for seeing her again, but I was afraid due to my anger. I was afraid that I would lose my temper. The second she saw me at the terminal, she ran to me, crying, and for a split second, I saw my daughter when she was 7. I was weird, picturing a child in my mind. She ran screaming "Daddy," and the second she hugged me, she began to cry loudly. It was like a wail that caused so many people to look at us. She just kept saying sorry over and over, asking me to forgive her, and I just held her for over 15 minutes. She refused to let me go. It took her fiancé and I to convince her to do so. It was as if she felt the second she let go, I was going to vanish. After she composed herself, her fiancé properly introduced himself, and then they introduced me to their child. I won't lie, I cried. I wasn't angry, but I cried holding this infant. Luna was also the splitting image of her mother when she was 19, which made me wonder about Marisol. During the drive home, we talked about her fiancé's boot camp, how he's going to be a career man, how Luna was going to college online to learn accounting, mostly catching up conversation. When we arrived at my house, Jocelyn and her family has a spread ready for them. Since we've been together, Jocelyn learned how to cook Spanish foods, but the week leading up to Luna's visit she went a little overboard. Yet I get it, she wanted to make an impression. Her and Luna just hit it off. Every few minutes Luna would walk towards me just to give me a quick hug and go back to Jocelyn. I was just holding my son and my grandson. While Jocelyn was introducing Luna to her family, I put the babies to bed, and I went to the porch for some fresh air. Luna's fiancé was standing by foot of the yard, staring at all of the bisons roaming around. For a moment I wanted to give him the dad talk, but I felt that it wasn't my place. Instead, I asked him how he liked the view, and he was awestruck. I know the feeling of living in the city the majority of your life. Wide open spaces are a marvel to take in. After a minute or two he looked at me and told me how regretful Luna was. I've been with your daughter for 3 years and not a day goes by when she mentioned how much she misses you and regret what she did. Out of everything he told me, that single sentence constantly replays in my mind. Her fiancé's name is Roberto. For a man who is only 19 years old he acts and talks like a man in his 30s. That tells me he had a rough life to mature so quickly. I know the feeling. The following day, I had to go to the shop and Luna practically jumped in the car with the baby. Even Roberto told her it was okay and to enjoy herself. Luna looked like she was going to hyperventilate, and I told her that we'll work a half day and I'll spend the rest of the day with her. That seemed to do it and I slowly began to realize how traumatized Luann was. During the drive I asked Roberto how bad she was. She has severe abandonment issues, constantly afraid that he's going to leave her, despite him telling her that he will never. She calls him a lot, a bit clingy at times, and in the beginning, afraid to be herself in fear that they will break up. He had to reaffirm his love for her just so she could let her guard down a little. This was my doing, I know that, but he doesn't blame me. He told me he completely understood why I did what I did. Allow me to say that Roberto is a terrible mechanic. He knows nothing about cars, so I had him clean up the shop so he could work off the plane tickets. We closed early and when we arrived, Luna practically ran towards me. She looked unhinged. I told her that I'll be back, and she went to her fiancé. When I walked into my house, Jocelyn told me that Luna needs to be reminded that everything is going to be fine. That I won't leave her again. I didn't know what to say, but Jocelyn grabbed my hands and told me that Luna was hurting, and she needed her father. For the next couple of days, I spent all my time with Luna. Getting reacquainted with her. I took her to my in-laws' ranch and showed her the bisons, the elks, and took her on a hike. 2 days before the wedding I apologized to her for leaving. I apologized for the way I acted, apologized for the actions I took. She didn't want to hear none of it. She told me that there's nothing that I should apologize for. She said she knows she was the reason why it all fell apart, that she knows it was her fault and I had to stop her. I began to cry. I told her that it wasn't her fault. I was angry, I was hurting, and despite what happened, I should be the one who should apologize. We both cried and just held each other. Luna appeared to be slightly better. On the day of my wedding she was happy. In the last minute, Jocelyn made her into a bridesmaid and Roberto a groomsman. The wedding was beautiful. During the reception I asked the DJ to play the song from Luna's Quince and I asked her to dance with me. She was crying the entire time, holding on to me for dear life as we danced. I haven't felt this happy in a long time. I let Luna and her fiancé stay in my house, taking care of her little brother while I went to Hawaii for my honeymoon. When we got home, she was happy. She hugged us and it felt great. Roberto told me that he's going to Camp Dwyer in Afghanistan and would like to know if Luna could stay near us. He would pay for an apartment near us, until he could buy a house. Of course, I said yes. They went back to the city the day before yesterday. Like I said, it's been eventful. Luna's wedding is in November and Roberto is leaving in December. Roberto sent me what constitutes a year's rent for a townhouse community 3 miles away from my house. However, Jocelyn suggests we should put a double wide on our property for Luna and let her save her money to buy a house when Roberto comes back. Marisol has been blowing up my phone and based on the messages she left, she's not happy that Luna is moving. Right now, my focus is on my family and to mend my relationship with my daughter.
Tomorrow we will hear new details of this story in updates, don't miss it.